Good morning, scholars. Today we're going to continue our way through Pharr's Homeric Greek, a book for beginners, looking at how the subjunctive mood gets formed across the tenses. So to begin, the subjunctive mood only occurs in three tenses. It occurs in the present tense, the aorist tense, and the perfect tense. And so I used to just use the expression or the statement, the subjunctive has no future, the subjunctive has no future, the subjunctive has no future, to remind me that I shouldn't be looking for any such form as a future subjunctive. What we'll see down the road is that the subjunctive mood is actually a weakened, idealized form of something in the future. So that's part of the reason. But so it's only going to occur in the present subjunctive, the aorist subjunctive, which means we'll have a first and second aorist subjunctive, as well as a subjunctive aorist passive forms, first and second, and it's going to occur in the first and second of the perfect as well. But forming the subjunctive is actually quite easy, because you're just adding slightly modified endings to the tense stems that you've already learned. So what happens is, the key here is that at Smythe 457, in the subjunctive of all verbs, the thematic vowel is omega/ada, as opposed to what we saw in the indicative, where the thematic vowel was omicron/epsilon. So we end up with the following endings in the active: o, es, a, omen, ete, ose, where we see that the iota that we saw in the indicative, epsilon, iota, sigma, epsilon, iota, in the second and third person of the singular, that iota becomes the iota subscript found beneath the eta of the lengthened thematic vowel. So again, o, es, e, omen, ete, ose. So I would start by just writing out these 6 forms, say 20 times, just to get them in your head. And you'll see that they occur as such again and again and again in each of the tenses. So let's start at the present. With the present, if you compare the present indicative with the present subjunctive, the first thing you see is that the first person singular of both forms are identical. You can't really distinguish them. And there very rarely would be any confusion arising, because once you learn the uses of the subjunctive, it kind of stands out and you see when you need it and can recognize it as such. But beyond that, you see very clearly the difference that arises from the expansion of the thematic vowel from epsilon to eta throughout the forms of the subjunctive in the present. So you get luo, lues, lue, luomen, luete, luose. So notice that third plural, the omicron, omega, sigma, iota, as opposed to the omicron, upsilon, sigma, iota of the indicative third plural. So going to the subjunctive of the first aorist, you'll see that you're just adding the same endings that you just had in the present. Those same endings are being added to the aorist stem without the augment. Your augment, that epsilon of the augment, only occurs in the indicative tenses, so you're going to just have the aorist stem marked by the sigma, and to which these endings that you've already seen are going to be added. And thus, this is where it's good to remember that the future has no the subjunctive has no future. It's good to remember that little saying, because you might see luso and might, if you were confused and thinking that the future did have the subjunctive mood, you might think that's what you're looking at. But what you're just looking at is the first aorist. Okay, jumping to the second aorist, it's exactly the same endings, but they're just put onto your unaugmented second aorist stem. So lipo, lipase, lipe, lipomen, lipete, lipose. And you see there the difference between the indicative endings of the second aorist and those of the subjunctive, where the second aorist in the indicative had completely different endings than what you found in the present, whereas with the second aorist subjunctive, you have the exact same endings. So it's really just one set of endings that you apply to the various tense stems. Okay. Moving to the aorist passive, we have the exact same endings again, and again, they're added to the unaugmented tense stem, but notice the placement of the accent in the subjunctive. That accent wants to ride the thematic vowel, and so luto, lutes, lute, lutomen, lutete, lutose. Okay. And if you compare that with your forms of the indicative forms, the distinctions are quite clear. Okay. Now, in the perfect, you have the same thing going on. Look at the form that's in the far right. You see the same endings we've seen added to the reduplicated form of the stem. Leluco, leluques, leluque, lelucomen, lelucete, lelucose. So those exact same endings. Now in the middle, what you have is an alternative, what's called the periphrastic formation, where you're using the active participle of the perfect, which we haven't learned yet, and combining that with the subjunctive forms of the verb to be, aime, and then you get lelucos, oi, lelucos, es, etc. But you see that these are very recognizable still even. But do note that in this periphrastic form, you have to decline the participial part of it as nominative, dual, or plural, depending on where you're at in the paradigm. But we'll look at that later. I doubt if Homer actually uses this form, but you most certainly would see it in Attic and probably in New Testament as well. Okay, so when you get to the middle forms of all these tenses, it's exactly as you would expect. The only complication is in the second singular, where you have that same phenomenon of the disappearance of sigma between vowels occurring. But other than that, you're looking at the same endings, except the thematic vowel has been expanded from omicron to omega, from epsilon to eta. So, o my, a, etai, ometa, este, ontai. So in the present, you see those endings added to the present stem. Lu omai, lu e, lu etai, lu ometa, lu este, lu ontai. In the first aorist, you see the same endings, those middle endings added to the aorist stem. So exactly what you did in the active, but just adding these middle endings instead. Lusomai, luse, lusetai, lusomata, luseste, lusontai. In the second aorist, just as you should expect by now, you're simply adding those middle endings of the subjunctive with the expanded thematic vowel to the second aorist verb stem. Lepomai, lepe, lepetai, lepomata, lepeste, lepontai. And if you compare those with the indicative forms, they stand out quite distinctly. So there you have it. The forms of the subjunctive are not very difficult to learn, since it's just a matter of that thematic vowel being expanded. So keep working hard, and I'll see you again very soon. Be well and have a great day. Goodbye.